Semiconductors are back in the news, this time not because of a shortage, but due to a glut. There is a surplus of chips in the global market, which is bad news for chip makers. Revenues are shrinking and jobs are being cut. But why is the surplus of chips bad news? Here's a quick primer. Semiconductors had become the buzzword 2 years back. That's when the pandemic struck. What are semiconductors? Think of them as the brain of mobile phones, laptops, vehicles, even weapons. They're the building blocks of these devices. The world had run out of them, and they were all over the headlines. There were reports of large-scale chip shortages. It was a time when people were working from home and supply chains were disrupted. Demand for electronic products went up sharply by more than 10% according to some estimates, which meant that there was a higher demand for chips. In fact, I have some figures with me. Global semiconductor sales increased more than 26% in 2021. They crossed $550 billion. The year before, this figure was $440 billion. How did the industry counter this high demand? They shipped more than 1 trillion semiconductor units in 2021. China was the single largest market with sales worth nearly $193 billion. Companies increased output, but they struggled to match the high demand. At the same time, they also made billions of dollars. Fast forward to the second half of last year, 2022. Here's where the trend reverses. Demand fell sharply as offices opened up, smartphone shipments fell by 11%, personal computers by 15%, and the result was this: a fall in chip sales. Year on year, chip sales fell by 15% in the fourth quarter of last year. And in China's case, the fall was the steepest. As of November, sales plunged by more than 21% in China. Customers did not buy as many products as they did earlier. Where do you think that left chip makers? With huge stocks of unused inventory. How much exactly? Estimates suggest 3 to 4 months worth of supply. Almost all of it gathering dust. Now, companies are cutting their losses and jobs. Intel let go of 200 people and they cut salaries by up to 25%. What about China, a country already fighting a chip war with the United States? Its problems have multiplied. On the one hand, there's America. It accounts for about half of the world's semiconductor market. The US is stitching a coalition with other major players, the likes of South Korea and the Netherlands. They're joining hands to counter Beijing. What will they do? Block China's access to advanced equipment for chip production. Take HiSilicon, for instance. It's the design arm of Huawei. In 2022, the company fell out of the list of the world's top 25 semiconductor vendors. Its revenue declined by 81% compared to 2021. And now Beijing is dealing with a drop in demand. China's top chip makers saw losses of more than 26%. I'm talking about the Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp, or SIMC. Its profits fell by 26% to $425 million, and the company anticipates that this trend will continue, at least for the first 6 months of this year. Experts say the slowdown is a global phenomenon. It stems from the lack of demand, and they're right. But remember, China is aiming to be self-sufficient in this game. It wants to cut dependency on the US and other nations for importing raw materials. Things aren't going as planned, though. Plus, there's the India factor. You see, all eyes were on New Delhi as the US-China tussle played out. India was seen as the alternative to help fill the gap in the chip industry. Reports say the Biden administration is now seeking New Delhi's help in shifting supply chains away from China. The meeting between the two sides last week also sought to boost investments in India. How big is India's market? The semiconductor market here is projected to see revenues exceed $300 billion by 2026. New Delhi, on its part, has encouraged companies to manufacture chips in India. It announced a $10 billion incentive in 2021 to bolster its case. So far, 4 global companies have responded to India's offer. At the center of this invite, roll out a second round of proposals soon. But there's a rider. The situation is different now. From a supply deficit mode, the chip market is in a demand deficit state. How India adapts to this remains to be seen.